Let's Take This Outside with Marianne Iveson, the podcast where she speaks to athletes, outdoor professionals, and scientists about why they connect with nature.
Brad Sinopoli is a former CFL wide receiver and now the owner of Sinopoli Fishing. Brad played for both the Calgary Stampeders and the Ottawa Redblacks and was twice named the CFL's most outstanding Canadian and has won 2 Grey Cups. Brad's passion for the outdoors has seamlessly carried over into his post-football life as he has become a successful fishing charter operator. Based in Ottawa, Sinopoli combines his love of nature with his entrepreneurial spirit, offering guided fishing experiences through his company, Sinopoli Fishing. Also in this episode is fellow podcaster and broadcaster Brent Wallace from Coming in Hot, who has worked alongside Brad and will handle all the football-related questions. Please welcome Brad Sinopoli and Brent Wallace. Gentlemen, welcome to Let's Take This Outside. It's been a very long time coming.
Thank you for having us. I'll just
Thank
speak
you,
for Brad.
It's been very long. I'm happy we're all together finally.
We've only met because it was a long distance meet because I was at a Redblacks game. I'm wearing, it's not even a Redblacks shirt. It's like a Rough Rider shirt, which is a previous team, right, Brent?
Correct.
Okay.
Hold that up. Let's see. I want to see that shirt.
Here, let me show you.
Ooh, that's cool.
I'm glad this is mostly an audio only podcast, but it's a vintage Ottawa Rough Riders shirt. And we met from a distance because you and Brent do the talking on the field, right? And then we waved from afar, but we've never met in person. But you are from Ottawa.
Well, again, that's not true.
What's not
you guys
true?
met on the concourse when your dad
That's
was
true.
there,
Yeah, that's true. We did meet on the concourse, and then Brent had called up to the stands,
and then we waved like 2 idiots at you in the stands.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was outside, so that's how this is related to this podcast. So here's the thing. Brad is here because we're going to talk about fishing, outdoors, how he goes from professional football to that. But Brent is here because I know nothing about football. He's going to help me with the stats. But you guys are actually buddies. And Brent, you've actually been fishing with Brad before.
I'm just here for moral support for Brad because I don't know that he can complete a sentence.
You know, I can't even classify that as moral support. I would say I feel supported when you are a part of something. So I appreciate that. But yes, we've fished together and we do work together. Kind of. I would call it work slightly, I guess, what we do.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how much my producers are going to hack up this episode. It's going to be good. First of all, it is the first official, this will come out in the new year, but this is the first official snow day in Ottawa. My first question, Brad, do you ice fish? Is that a thing?
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. I was actually on the phone earlier today with Brent talking about ice fishing. I invited him out, we should go out for a nice little calm, relaxing ice fish in the winter. And it'll be a miracle if I get him out, but I think I will. There's going to be a time he'll be able to drive his car out and we'll get him in the shack. It'll be nice and cozy. It'll be a great time. But yes, I do ice fish. Hopefully this year, the last couple of years have been pretty brutal in terms of ice forming and whatnot. And it just wasn't the safest going out there. It was a short season. So hopefully this year, the weather kind of helps. Go ahead, Brent. I know you want to say something about the ice fishing.
So you just said it's been the last couple of years hasn't been good for the ice forming. And then you're like, no, Brent, drive your car across the barely frozen sheet of ice to the shack where we're going to put a heater in it. And then the snow's going to melt and the ice and we're going to fall in.
That's what I said, drive your car.
But there's a science behind measuring the ice before you do this thing, Brent. It's not just it
doesn't sound like Brad uses the measuring device.
Looks good, guys. We're going to go. Yeah. Let's go, buds. Let's go across the ice.
That's the old school way of doing it. That's the old school way. You look outside. Well, it's December 15th. The ice should be formed, and then out they go.
Not in 2024. Definitely not.
No, the science, actually, it is. You're right. It is very scientific. But the way you do it, and it's a pretty tough calculation. You go out with a metal pole or something to poke through the ice, and you just jam it until you break through. So you count how many times. Okay, so we did 3 hard jams, and then we broke through. Oh, it's only 3 inches. And that's how you kind of probe your way out. So you can kind of, each day you go out, you'll see how far you can get until you feel, okay, we're kind of safe out here. I mean, once it's 4 inches and beyond, I wouldn't drive a truck on it, but you're safe to go out and have a good time.
Okay, Brad, where did your love of fishing and the outdoors begin? Because you're from Peterborough, which I've had so many guests on who are from the Peterborough area, which is like such a prime outdoor area in Ontario anyway.
Yeah, I was pretty lucky, I would say, growing up in Peterborough. There's a million places to go. Whether you want to go to a popular lake, I mean, we have Little Lake right downtown Peterborough. You can go, honestly, anywhere within an hour of Peterborough. You can be in the complete middle of nowhere where you're going to see absolutely nobody and do some type of fishing in some backcountry little lake. That's kind of how it was for me. My dad was a big reason why I'm into the outdoors. He took me fishing, honestly, so I could remember maybe 4 or 5. He would tie some string on a popsicle stick. We'd go out to like little creeks and whatnot, and we would just fish with like corn and bread. And that's how I started. And then eventually you get into, okay, the little kiddie, fishing pole, and he would take me down under this bridge out in Gannon's Narrows, actually. And that's what we would do. He would wake me up usually around like 5, and we would go out, we'd fish for a couple hours, and then we'd be home by, 6 or 7 or whatever. And then that was it. From there, it was kind of like, once I got older, started hanging around some other friends, obviously around Peterborough, there's people that fish, and it just kind of blossomed from there. Once you get old enough to buy your own stuff, that's when it starts to get really serious. You start eyeing down boats and all the right gear, and once you have your independence. But yeah, it's started with popsicle sticks and catching little minnows in a creek, kind of like Brent.
What, catching Brent is like a minnow in a creek? Is that what you're saying?
No, he catches minnows. That's what he's.
Oh, okay. When you're, I want to talk about that later. Don't you worry. I want to talk about Brent's view of going out on your Sinopoli fishing expeditions. It's an expedition.
It's a 3-hour tour.
A tour. Sorry. Okay, wrong.
Yeah, call it whatever you like.
Like Gilligan's
Island. For some,
Island.
it's an expedition. For some, it's an adventure. For some, it's, it's almost a chore.
Brad demands I call him captain the whole time, though.
Do you wear a hat on the boat, Brad?
No, but Brent told me I should. I feel a little uncomfortable being called captain, to be honest with you, on such a small vessel. Especially one that doesn't have a name.
But he stands at the front and just looks out.
That is true.
Do you guys do the Titanic thing together at the front of the boat? Does someone hold someone else?
We should.
Oh, that what happens usually on the boat, that stays.
No. Okay, wait a sec. There's a couple things. One, the first time I went with Brad, I brought snacks. I made sandwiches.
Wow.
Donuts, coffee. Because I grew up like Brad. My grandfather took me fishing. It's some of my favorite memories of all time is my grandfather and I sitting in a boat catching flounder by garbage bags. They would just hop in the boat. But he would wake me up at like 5 a.m. Go, oh, hurry up. The day's half over. And going fishing with him will always be one of my top favorite memories. So I'm like Brad that way. But so I show up with Brad, loaded. I got basically a picnic basket full of goodies. He complains the entire time. Then I brought, have you heard of the banana? So you've heard of the banana, obviously, but you're not supposed to bring a banana on a boat. It's bad.
Whoa. Okay. I've never heard of this before.
So
wait. Is it just like fishing boats or is it more like canoes? Is it like all boats?
A vessel. Yes. A flotation device.
Oh,
yeah.
I need to ask all my outdoorsy friends about the banana.
That's a good question, whether it's a fishing boat or just a vessel. There's many, it goes back a long time. I believe it started with non-fishing boats. And it was bad luck to bring bananas on, when they were crossing across the Atlantic and stuff like that. That's just what, And then eventually, anglers need a reason to explain sometimes why people don't catch fish. So usually you have to come up. So the banana is an easy out because people will always, a lot of potassium. People bring that for energy. And then, it's a big, bright yellow thing. It's an easy target.
All right. So no bananas on the boats. Rule number 1 of fishing, of Sinopoli fishing and fishing in general.
Yeah, no bananas. Unless you accidentally bring one and we catch some fish, then they actually become good.
Oh.
So it's a bit of it can go either way.
So as I'm eating the banana, I remember watching a TV show where this superstition came up and I'm like, Brad, do you know of the superstition? He's like, no, which he hadn't heard. So we didn't catch any more fish the rest of the day.
Oh, so when you brought up the superstition is when you stopped catching fish.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I ruined it.
Yeah.
But I had a great time. Everybody, go to Sinopoli Fishing. Just don't bring bananas.
What do I always say, Brent, when I come on the boat? What do I say about people coming on the boat?
I don't know. You just usually say, hurry up.
That shows just the
how much attention he pays. Yes. Yeah. What is the thing you always say when people come on the boat, Brad?
I always say I'm only as good as the guests or the anglers that are fishing. And I can,
you victim blame, I think it's called.
A little bit, yeah. You gotta. I feel pressure. I think the guests need to feel a little pressure as well.
When you have the guests on the boat, what kind of people do you like? Do you like people who are just more energetic and don't know anything about fishing and are ready to show up and like just have a good positive attitude? Or is it more people who are like really serious anglers who like are all into it? I'm sure it's probably fun on both sides.
Ooh, that's a really good question, actually. Yeah, because you get both sides, especially when you're fishing for muskie. You get the people that are really hardcore because muskie is such a long, hard, mentally draining, physically draining, potentially it can be, day or a couple days, depending on how it goes. So you have to be a little bit crazy, to be honest with you. If you're used to just, you go fishing and you're pulling fish every 5 minutes, that's not muskie. So you have to be a little bit kind of out there to do that. So there's that hardcore group that loves to do that. Then there's the group that sees the photos. I'm going to hesitantly put Brent in this group. They see the photo. They go, oh my God, look at that fish, and then they ask about it and they say, I want to go catch it. And so usually with those people, it takes a little bit more kind of massaging just to kind of make them understand that, like, look, it could be in the first 5 minutes that you catch a fish, it could be in the last 5 minutes, which means that you've gone 9 or 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours, without anything happening. But the beauty about muskie is that in the 10th hour, when you least expect it, that big fish could show up. And so, that's the tough part with people that have never muskie fished. But generally, if you have a really good attitude, if you're positive, if you like kind of that cat and mouse game of fishing for something that's difficult, which again, with Brent, it was a lot of work to kind of keep him going. Good thing he had snacks. But that's kind of the two categories that kind of how it goes. The people in the middle can kind of go either way. I think the people in the middle that haven't quite got the full picture of what muskie is, they're the ones that sometimes get down a little bit because maybe they've seen a muskie or maybe they've caught one before and it was by accident, but it was maybe walleye fishing or bass fishing. So they expect that it kind of just happens because they've already seen one or they've had an encounter, but they haven't had the true musky grind of like everyone goes through that and you have to go through that to really understand and connect with the fish, I think.
I would compare it to almost any other endurance sport.
Yes. So I'll say with Brad, if you've never gone out to fight a muskie and you've only gone out for bass fishing or trout or all that stuff, then you can't fully appreciate what it takes. Like I'm throwing a lure from Brad's boat that's bigger than most of the fish I've caught. Like,
yeah.
And it's not
Correct.
like by the 50,000th time I've thrown this thing, it is not light. Your shoulder will feel it by the end of the day.
That's another piece to it that's really difficult is you're throwing these big awkward lures. You have these long awkward rods compared to what you normally use. And you look at it, you're like, what thing is going to eat this thing? When you're using other lures, when you're walleye or bass, or it makes sense. You say, okay, there's a little grub on this thing, or we stick a little minnow on it. It makes sense. When you go to a musky lure, sometimes they're 12, 14 inches long. Some of them are big rubber lures with long tails. And, what is this? Is there any squid in the water? Like they look weird. So you have a hard time believing that what you're throwing is actually going to catch a fish.
Brad gave me a 2x4. That's what it was.
Is that true?
It was a piece of wood.
Hockey stick, actually. Hockey stick. And that's the best lure in the boat.
Okay, I want to talk more about fishing, but let's go back to the beginning for a second. So you're fishing as a kid, you eventually get your own gear, but were you doing any other outdoor sports? Were you doing hiking? Were you doing anything else outside? Were you hunting?
Pretty much everything but hunting, I would say, to be honest with you. I did a lot of bird watching.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is a little bit, that's out of left field. And looking back on it now, I do understand that my dad I think, took me out into the outdoors to kind of balance me out a little bit. And, you have, especially with bird watching, I know this for a fact because he talked about it a little bit, where you have to go out, you have to be patient, you have to be kind of silent because you're listening for birds. And I think that was a way to kind of just calm me down a little bit. The other side of me of being so into sports and just kind of being a bit of a crazy kid is I just had this really high motor to just always be active. So I think the outdoors was a way, whether we were going hiking, we did a lot of hiking and camping growing up and whatnot. But I think the bird watching was a way to kind of teach me a little bit of patience, which actually helped with fishing as well.
I'm not quite in my bird watching era quite yet, but I think it starts to happen like in your late 30s, early 40s is when you're like, oh, you like have an extra like interest in birds.
You see a beautiful cardinal fly by and land on a branch, and you think, my God, that thing is just what a beautiful bird.
I know Brent's itching to get in on the bird talk. So
well, the problem when his dad took him out was he said, find the dodo bird, and Brad has been searching and searching the dodo bird.
Still searching.
By the way, I just got a bird feeder this year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you did. Wasn't it a bet on your podcast coming in hot?
Well, yeah, it was. Anyways,
I'm plugging your podcast for my listeners. So.
I'm trying to move away from that. So I have a bird feeder in my backyard.
And anything you've noticed? Yeah. Sorry, Brad, but like anything you've seen, anything
condors, eagles, owls.
None of those things.
Condors and
wow,
yeah, it's wild. It's
flamingos.
It's like a zoo back there. Basically squirrels, chipmunks, and some blue jays.
Okay, so almost everything except birds.
Yes. I get excited if a bird actually hovers near it.
I feel like this podcast is very squirrel, and I have to go back to my original questioning. I'm so glad I have it next to me here. Brad, one of my favorite, why I wanted to talk to you was because like you're a star in the CFL, you grow up playing all of these sports, and then you end up, retiring and fishing. Actually, I want Brent to list off some of the stats because you are like such an impressive athlete.
So here's how it goes. When we work together at the Redblacks, we'll walk around. And whenever he meets somebody, I just go, well, that's Brad Sinopoli. He's a former Heck Creighton winner, which is the top CIS or U Sport quarterback football player in the country. Then he was a 4-time 1,000-yard receiver in the CFL All-Star, the last Canadian receiver until this year to have 1,000-yard receptions. 1,000-yard receiving. He holds the Redblacks record for receptions. He was named the top Canadian at the Grey Cup. And he also was named top Canadian in the CFL one year, if I'm not mistaken. Is that it?
2 years.
2 years.
How many Grey Cups do you have?
2.
Okay, so you go through this amazing career. At what point were you like, man, I just want to fish all day. I don't want to play football anymore.
Yeah, you know what? I'll answer that by saying I don't think I thought maybe I'll fish all day, but it is in the back of your mind. I think, the tough part when you get to the end of a career is you can foresee that it's going to end, and it's probably not going to end well. 98% of athletes go out not on their own terms for the most part, especially in football, I think. So basically, I got to the end. I start looking ahead down the road. Okay, what's the next 2 to 3 years look like potentially? Do I have maybe 4 or 5 years in me, or do I only have a couple? Little did I know, when you know, and I didn't expect that. So in my last year into the off season, you start kind of thinking about it a little bit. And I think when that competitiveness leaves a little bit, when you have to kind of think about what you're doing, I think that you're already done. That's kind of where I kind of made the decision leading up to that final year when I did retire. If you have any doubt, I just think it's really hard to play football. If you have any doubt about going on the field, not that you're playing, I don't want to say you're playing scared, but you're just playing tight a little bit. I think that you're just kind of realizing that, like, I think I've put everything into it, and it's not right if I'm only putting 80% into it. If you're not all in and you're stepping on the field, like, it just doesn't really go well. And injuries happen. It's not fair to yourself. It's not fair to teammates. That's a really hard thing to come to terms with, especially when you are so competitive and so driven, I think, your whole life to get to a certain point. And then all of a sudden it's this new feeling that you've never experienced before. So I think COVID helped me because I was able to kind of step back a little bit, sort through those emotions and kind of make that decision. I think if COVID didn't happen and you don't have that break, you kind of get in that cycle of, I can go one more year. You can go one more year. And then all of a sudden that's when you're on the outside looking in and you might get out because of an injury. You're probably going to get released or whatever the way it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So that was a big decision, but I don't know. I just think when you know kind of thing.
Was there a part of you that wanted to go back to that like slow it down, bird watching with your dad kind of feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. You're just so high strung, even though it might not look like that, but you're in a different mode when you're playing. And when you're done, I'm not aggressive. I don't picture myself catching balls or making runs and breaking tackles or doing whatever. Like you just don't have that imagery in your brain anymore, I don't think. Whereas when you're playing, you're in this intense mode all the time. You're always training. You're always thinking about your training schedule. You're always thinking about when you're in season, it's a week between games. You're thinking about either the previous game or the game leading up. You're trying to work through some type of injury. It's just always in this fighting kind of mentality. And once that leaves, like it's gone. It's really hard to get back. So I think, I was really craving kind of slowing down, not having that. It's a good stress. There's a lot of stress when you are dressing for a football game, when you're mentally thinking about the potentials. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but there's a lot of times where you look at film and you're like, wow, that hit was really close to being a really bad one. I think over time, you just kind of lose that mentality where you're embracing that versus, I think I've kind of had enough of that and I've put everything I can into it. I think it's time to kind of pull out of that.
Brent, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to add to you also, Brad, were a dominant CFL player, named one of the top 10 Redblacks of all time. So for you, being on that level is a way different level than the guy that's going to play a season and we're never going to hear from again. So that's a whole other level because you were just a dominant all-star. And I think that probably adds to the ampedness, which I don't think is a word for you.
No, that's a word. No, that's a good observation because, this is why I do compare muskie fishing to football and sports. There's a lot of pressure to maintain, right? And the worst thing you can do as an athlete, or I think in any profession, is become complacent. If you think, okay, I've worked hard to get to this point and now I'm here, so I can just kind of ride it and go. And it's like, no, you have to almost do the opposite. You have to continually keep working harder to maintain the spot that you got to. So that kind of, and I think that with muskie, every day you start from scratch, and that's what football was. Didn't matter about what I did last game or last year, even though, Brent might feel differently. I always felt like every day I woke up, I'm going to get cut today if I don't do what I'm supposed to do. I can't just rest on, oh, well, you're this guy and you've done this, which was a lot of pressure. And I didn't know that I actually kind of need that pressure, which is what I really like about the muskie. There's pressure every day and I absolutely love it.
So I see that in you when we go out fishing, right? You are ultra prepared. You've got 82 lures ready to roll, the rods, everything is ready to go, even though I make fun of you and say you're never prepared. And you're we got to catch a fish here. And so you are checking water temperature, all this stuff that I didn't know anything about. Marion, we'll get into this later, but being a fishing guide is it's like working for the FBI. They don't say anything. There's secrets these guys keep with each other. Crazy. Hey, what did you catch that on? Oh, I got it on a jig. I'm like, that's not even close to true. Or they take pictures that aren't where they actually are. Anyway, it's fascinating to me.
I feel like if you're, at that level of a professional sport, I feel like you are able to bring that intensity, of course, like you said, into fishing. But at what point, you're like, oh, I'm going to fish, I'm going to retire. What is Sinopoli Fishing though? What conversation did you have with your wife that you were like, okay, I want to start a business and do this and let's make money off of it. And I want to fish and I want to fish with other people and I want to catch muskie. And how did that come to be that you retired, then decided to do this?
She thinks he goes to a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
He hasn't told her.
Dead on. She always, you had fish again for lunch? Yeah, that's again a good question. I think very similar to football. If you were to ask me when I was coming into the CFL, would you envision yourself becoming a receiver or a different position? No, I really didn't. I think things kind of happen in life that you don't necessarily plan for, or maybe you mentally you do a little bit. You kind of dream about it, but for it to actually come to fruition, I think is a whole different story. So it kind of was a little bit like that. When I retired, it wasn't like as soon as I retire, this is what I'm doing. I'm setting this up and I'm going. It kind of just naturally evolved into a spot where I started thinking about it. And you're on the water every day. You start kind of making those calculations of, okay, is this kind of worth it? Am I able to do this? You got to get this number of clients. You got to make this amount of money, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of started slowly. That first year was a bit of a trial. You would take some people out. Okay, I can get trips. I am able to do this. And I really enjoy doing this. I absolutely loved it. Like, to me, there's nothing better than netting somebody's muskie or somebody's first muskie. Brent's smiling. It was so fun. I know we always joke about it. Netting his first muskie, to me, I would rather net that than myself catch my personal best. And I think I just understand the feelings of that people get, that you've worked so hard for this, and there it is. That, like, your reward is right there. And Brent worked hard. He caught his in the rain after we were out, I don't know, once maybe, until he caught his muskie. And I absolutely loved it. So for me, it's just that feeling of seeing people have that joy and kind of knowing that they worked for it and feeling and appreciating the fish as well and how tough it is to catch.
I just like to make one point on that, Brad. So as he just points out, it's my first muskie. I've made it to the pinnacle of muskie fishing.
Yes.
He goes to take the picture as I'm holding it, like he tells me to. I look at the pictures later that he sends me. They're all blurry because his camera was dirty.
Oh, God. It was raining. Right. I think it was a little foggy.
Yeah.
Let's Take This Outside now has a newsletter. Keep up to date with outdoor news, events, and great discount codes and deals from our partners. Sign up today at letstakethisoutside.ca.
What are you fishing for, or what do people want to fish for other than muskie? Like, if people want to go on a boat with you, what are they catching?
Okay, so mainly 3. So it'll be walleye bass, pike, I guess. So just like a multi-species kind of day where you go out, we're going to just fish, different techniques. Let's just catch fish. Most of the season is muskie. So from the opening day, so first Saturday in June, all the way till the end of the year in November is going to be muskie. Depending on middle of the summer and water temperatures. Now, sometimes I'll change bodies of water if where I'm fishing is a little bit too hot, and I might move to a bigger body of water that's a little bit cooler. But sometimes I'll also just kind of take on some more walleye trips, usually in like later August. That's going to be the hottest part of the summer. So yeah, mainly those 4 throughout the season.
If you're an outdoor lover and you're like, I want to go on this fishing trip, there must be other animals that you do see though, right?
Yes, there are.
Like otters? Is there like otters, or is there like maybe deer on the side? Is there birds?
It's not Lorne Green's New Wilderness. Like, it's just, we're out on the Ottawa River.
I didn't know where you guys fished. I had no idea where you went.
Whoa,
that was one of my questions.
You're not allowed to tell them where you fish either. Like,
there's not too many choices around Ottawa. It's one of the 4 main areas. It's funny as you asked that, because we saw lots of bald eagles when you were out.
Oh, cool.
Like, they were flying right over by the boat. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I told him to take some photos. He kind of fumbled his phone. He was snacking on something.
On a banana, probably.
Probably.
We'll bring up the cucumbers later. But I took video of the eagles.
Okay, I wish I could like put them into the podcast. Maybe send it to me later and we can like...
It's a good idea.
Brad must have some photos. Oh, no, he didn't, because he dropped his phone in the water.
No, I didn't drop my phone in the water.
You lost it.
How many times have you dropped your phone off the boat?
Actually, none. I'm being 100% truthful. I've never dropped my phone in the water, but I did accidentally break my phone this year and lost basically 4 years of videos and photos of
Oh no!
fish. That was a tough day. Yeah, that Brent always seems to bring up. But I've gotten over it now. That was about 3 months ago.
Well, luckily I had photos of me fishing one day, so I sent those to you.
Yeah, you did send me some.
They were blurry, but you do have them.
A little bit.
So say you're listening and you made it all the way to this point in the podcast, and
this right now
for listening.
has 1 billion hits. I'm sure of it.
You made it this far into the podcast, and you're like, I would love to go fishing with my hero, Brad Sinopoli. How would someone do that, and what can they expect from the day?
Okay, so you can go to my website, sinopolifishing.com. Brent, I believe that's correct. Usually you speak for me, or if I say something wrong, so I believe it's that. Number 2, you can just look me up, Brad Sinopoli Fishing. It'll probably pop up at the top. You can go to my Instagram page, which will then lead you to a link to my website. And then you can either email me, you can go through the Wix website form or whatever, or you can just take my phone number off of the Google Maps or the website and just text or call me. A lot of people just shoot me a text or call me, and then it's an unofficial setup usually. So, usually you don't just pick, Saturday at 9 a.m. and away we go. I'm going to talk to you and figure out the best time and whatnot and stuff like that. So, and then you can just expect to have a lot of fun.
What do you bring? Like, what can I bring?
Oh God, you can bring anything you want as long as it fits on the boat.
Not bananas.
I've had some people, this fall, I had some people bring kind of a setup where it was on a Sunday and, they're heavy into football, NFL was on. So they brought up kind of a setup where they had a laptop and they were watching the NFL games on Sunday.
Oh,
and
great.
they asked
That's
before,
fun.
and I said, yeah, no problem. So I'm usually pretty easygoing, whatever people want to bring to make themselves comfortable, usually food or water, and a little bit of water for me would be helpful too.
So I brought cucumbers one time. He didn't want any, and I sliced them all up, and I put them in between us that we could share as we drive down in the water. And then he decided that he was just going to hammer down the throttle and dumped all my cucumbers out on the boat.
But you promised not to do that to anyone else, though, Brad, right?
No, because usually everybody else realizes that boats move. And
I thought we were having a nice leisurely time. And then suddenly we were launched to Mars.
You were set up like we were anchored having a nice boat picnic.
Yeah, I had my umbrella.
You're asking me if I want some jam on my crackers and this and that and my cucumber. Meanwhile, I was actually trying to fish and catch fish, so I did feel bad. You could have just 5-second rule and eaten them.
No, there was like 40 on the. I didn't have time. So here's a question I have for you, because I don't know if I've actually asked it. Have you ever been hooked on the boat by like a guest?
Oh, great question.
Yeah, only once.
That makes me cringe, because I have like secondhand cringe right now.
Mariana,
Wow.
I could send you some photos of friends that have been hooked that are like really, really bad. Thankfully, mine wasn't that bad. It was in the back and it came out really quick. So like I didn't have to cut a hook. I didn't have to push it through or anything like that. But it was, so generally I give the rule in the boat of how to cast. And this is a safety thing. Okay. So I always say you got to cast overhand, because if you cast sideways and the bail on the reel closes, you have a giant lure with 3 giant hooks on it that are swinging across the boat, usually at face level or neck level. Like it's just not a good combination. So I always kind of talk about that. There was one time where right after I kind of gave that spiel, I was setting some other people up, and out of the corner of my eye, I hear the bail close, and I just kind of just don't get my neck, and it swung around and caught me right in the back. Now I was wearing some clothes that I think helped stop the hook from going all the way in. But yeah, that was so that was the closest I've come. But I take great pride in saying that no guest has ever been hooked and no one's ever fallen over the edge. Usually we're as careful as we can. That would be the worst thing. It's inevitable. It's going to happen, I'm sure, at some point. I've had a lot of close calls personally, even just moving lures around the boat, long days, no water. You just kind of accidentally, and you hook yourself. So far, I'm okay.
Like they're razor sharp, these hooks, because if you just grab one accidentally, they'll cut you immediately. So do you think that I am good at casting?
Long dramatic pause.
Take your time, Brad. Don't rush the answer.
No, I'll give you this. You actually are very good. We didn't have any issues, and you caught your fish casting, which is a very hard thing to do. And you were working that really tougher lure to work. You did a really good job.
2x4.
2x4. It's not easy. And you don't complain. I can't believe I'm giving him compliments right now. This is like the craziest thing in the world.
This has turned into the Pump Brent Wallace's Eco podcast, actually.
Don't interrupt. Yeah, go on.
With you guys being such good friends, this is what I was on here for. I shouldn't have done it. No, okay. No, you're actually very good.
Yes.
You're patient, which was good. And you don't try to rush anything. That's the biggest thing. You just one cast at a time.
Because I don't have patience for anything, as you two both
know
me.
I was like, that's shocking. Yeah.
I have zero. You put me in a boat, I'm a different person. Love fishing.
You're right. And you know what, though? That's a lot of people feel that. As soon as you get on the boat, it's a different world. People aren't out there every day. I'm out there every day where I don't take it for granted, but I think you get used to it. And when people come on, there is a sense of you're out in fresh air. You're on a beautiful body of water. You're just fishing. It's even though I say it's very tough mentally and physically, it is very relaxing. And I think that is definitely an element that adds to being out there and the experience.
That's why I'm outside all the time, right? It's like, it's the only reason that I'm mentally sane in 2024 is the amount of time I spend outside hiking or biking or skiing or whatever.
I just like the travels with Brad in the truck.
Is this a segue to ask about your charger? We won't go there.
Okay. I brought 2 chargers for phones because I was like, I'll bring one for Brad. It's a long day on the water. You want to make sure your phone's charged. He's always talking to his wife. And I forgot one. And that was like 4 years ago. I don't know. He keeps telling me he's going to bring it, and I've never seen it since.
I actually forgot it just once, bringing it to a Red Black game. And now that the season's over, I have time to really look for it because it's there. It's not anywhere else.
Thank you for sorting out this lost charger on my podcast. I appreciate it.
Okay, I got another question.
What's the other question?
It's 2-part question.
Okay. For me?
Yeah.
Okay.
One is how far away are the guests that show up to book? And 2, what's the biggest type celebrity you've had, if you can, on your boat?
Ooh, good question.
Ooh.
I feel like I don't even need to be here. I feel like, Brent, you should just do that.
Really good question. No, you absolutely need to be here, Marianne. Trust me. So the farthest probably has been probably like Ukraine, maybe, I guess.
It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. All over the world, this guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people fish all over the world. It's crazy. And this year...
No, but they want to come see you. This is what... Did you not have Germany, or there were more Europeans?
Had people from Germany this year, Switzerland, people from down south in the States.
Why is muskie fishing so big for... What's the draw? And why is it Ottawa?
Yeah, so I'll start with Ottawa first. We're really lucky in Ottawa in terms of muskie fishing. Most muskies are going to be somewhat related to the Great Lakes. So it's going to be something off of that area. So that's why they're only really in this part of North America. The more south you go in the States, there's some states and areas where they do a lot of stocking. So those lakes aren't connected to anything else, but there's muskies in there. It's just, they've just done stocking programs. So I've fished down in Kentucky for muskies, which is not a natural place for muskies to be. So here in Ottawa, we have the Ottawa River, the St. Lawrence River that meet together. And that's pretty much the mecca of muskie fishing. I mean, there's other spots that are kind of like the northeast of the states around the Great Lakes that are really good as well. But here, this is where the largest muskies are. It's in the St. Lawrence. So we have the Ottawa, and we have the Rideau off of that. We have the Jock River, which is incredible that there's large muskies in the Jock River, the size of a driveway. So we're very lucky. You can fish 3 different or 4 different types of bodies of water within 45 minutes. You have the St. Lawrence, which is crystal clear. That's a whole other experience. Then you go on the Ottawa River and you're fishing in very dirty, murky, stained colored water. You can go on the Rideau, which is a little bit more of a neutral kind of, sometimes it's dirty, sometimes it's clear. You can go up to the Madawaska, which is a pretty clear lake, not like the St. Lawrence, but it's very clear. It's deeper. It's a different style. So you can kind of like pick and choose. If you're a muskie angler in Ottawa, you really get to say, okay, I'm going to go for a numbers day. I'm going to go up to this spot, or I'm going to go for a really big fish. Let's go down to this place. So we're really lucky. We're not just tied to one spot to fish for muskies.
The celebrity question, has there been one?
You're probably the biggest.
Oh, stop.
And I should say, Marianne, when he talked about at the beginning, we walk around Redblack games, most of the interactions are, oh my God, you're Brent Wallace. And then I got
no, they're not.
Back, oh my God, we got to get to our spot.
This is
so.
I just,
okay. I mean, he's on the big screen before the game starts too. So, and he usually goes in under the concourse to kind of hide his face, so people.
That's true. That is true. I won't watch myself when it shows up on the video.
Yeah,
board.
I would say you're the biggest, Brett.
That's not true.
Yeah.
You've had CFL stars. You had one who was booked, but you couldn't make it, unfortunately, which was the Stanley Cup champion winning member.
Oh.
So you've had, there's been a few. Okay, here's my other question that we alluded to earlier. Sorry, Mary.
Wait, 3-part question. Okay, go on.
3 parts, yeah. What's your third question?
It's the deception between guides. So this was all new to me. I had no idea. So when a fellow guide calls you up and goes, hey, I saw you caught one of those big bad boys. Where did you get him at? What do you tell them? Because here's why I know this. We went fishing, and then the next day you went fishing, and you said, oh, I caught a couple more. And I was like, oh, did you use the lure that I used or whatever? And you're like, I can't tell you. I'm like, what?
So it's secretive. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's another parallel to football, right? So in football, I mean, in sports, it's competitive. You have a game plan. You have film. Everyone has their own ideas. Everyone sees different things. So when you have your game plan, I'm not just going to willfully give it up to somebody else. It's competition. So it's up to you. So maybe I saw something in film that maybe you didn't see. Fishing is very much the same. It could be a spot that maybe you discovered, oh my God, there's this type of weed that's on this little flat that I've never known before. It could be somewhere where it's like on the other side of the weed bed. So there's a lot of things like that. It could be the lure. It could be just how they're attacking something in a certain day, any type of tidbit of information. I mean, people are choosing, okay, who do I go with? Do I go with this guide or this guide? And I think it takes a lot of time to kind of figure out some things on the water. So generally, I would say people do share information generally. However, it's the small details that usually are what gets you over the top. And those are the things that people kind of hold close to your chest. I mean, it is what it is. If you're going to go on someone just purely respecting the fact that, okay, you caught this fish right here at this time with this lure, you have to expect that those people, if they know that, they're going to go there and do that exact same thing. I'll say that.
Yeah, you're not giving it up. No.
Okay, well, what's the biggest fib you have told a fellow angler?
Oh, well, I don't know if I fibbed.
Wink. He just winked, by the way.
Yeah, I played football. Take a couple of hits here and there. Sometimes you get confused with where I was. Oh, I actually was on this body of water, but I said I caught it on this body of water.
Blaming the head injuries, I see. Okay.
You know what? I'll say this. People that fish a lot every day, and I told Brent this about, just pick a tree on a river and take a photo of it with nothing else around. Generally, I can probably, and most guides and people that are on the water can guess where you are. And whether it comes down to a couple branches that just look a certain way, we are so in tune to our surroundings and just landmarks and whatnot. Even though we have all this technology, I just think it's second nature. That's just the way it is. So you take a photo of a fish and someone will tell you, oh, that's this fish came out of that water, kind of thing. So really there's secrets, but people generally are able to kind of figure it out for the most part.
My dad and we used to fish at this little pond down the road on the farm in southern Ontario, and did a lot of fishing when I was a kid and when we were kids. So the next time he comes to visit in Ottawa, let's set up an outing, a little day or a half, maybe. And my dad would love it. So I think we should do that.
I would love to. Yeah. And what generally were you guys fishing for when you were growing up?
I'm trying to think what was even in the pond.
Probably bass.
Rainbow fish and bass and whatever kind of crawled into there. Yeah.
Nemo.
No Nemos. That's tropical fish.
Yeah,
but
those are oceans.
Definitely not in Tilbury, Ontario. But Brad Sinopoli, thank you so much for coming on Let's Take This Outside. Brent Wallace, thank you for guest hosting and coming along and giving me all the facts and making my life easy. Yes, we definitely need to fish next summer. Definitely not over the winter. I love the winter, but I don't love the ice. So,
well, you know what? I'm going to keep kind of throwing it out there in the group chat. And you know what? Maybe when the ice gets up to like 10 inches thick or something like that, you guys will feel better. I take my son out there. So if that makes you feel any better too, Brent, and Marianne too, like
there's no need to be walking across a frozen body of water to fish when I can just sit home.
But you want to be outside. But
it is cold.
Be outside. Oh.
You want to be outside, man. Yeah.
Okay, Marianne, me and you will go then.
Brad gets it.
I will be outside at some palm trees. If there's a palm tree, just call me. I will go with you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
See you. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. For more Let's Take This Outside, go to letstakethisoutside.ca.
Produced and distributed by the Sound Off Media Company.